Bitcoin prices are falling this morning. The cryptocurrency briefly touched an 18-month high last week, bouncing back from a sell-off after the CEO of crypto exchange Binance pled guilty to money laundering charges. Our next guest says even with the negative Binance news, it's, quote, inevitable the cryptocurrency will rally above $40,000 by year end. Joining us now is Markus Thielen, DeFiResearch.com head of research and author of Crypto Titans. Thank you for joining us this morning. So give us some context here, because we do tend to see Bitcoin rallying at year end. How much of that then is tied to perhaps Bitcoin shrugging off some of these Binance concerns versus sort of this seasonality?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think the market took the Binance news, quite well. I think the market has been waiting for this news for, at least a year, we can argue. And I think the rumor was that Binance would have to pay, 10 billion. We heard some other news that, they tried to negotiate for 8 billion and 6 billion, and finally they settled with the DOJ, for 4 billion. And of course, 4 billion sounds a lot better than 10 billion. So I think the market took it for that reason as pretty good news.
So is this finally removing that overhang? I mean, you heard Brian Armstrong from Coinbase say that the industry can finally turn the page as a result of what's played out with Binance, among many other issues. Is it as simple as that?
Well, it's not as simple as that, because we still have the SEC outstanding with kind of 13 potential penalties. So the SEC was not part of this deal. That's certainly like an overhang, but nevertheless, I think the industry looks through it, and the industry has gone through various crypto exchanges, really from from Mt. Gox to Bitfinex to BitMEX to FTX and so on. So it's not going to be a big headwind. I think really the tailwind that we're going through, as we mentioned this briefly earlier, is December tends to be a positive month, so average returns for December tend to be plus 12%. Q1 seems to be a little bit more struggling. But of course, we're having these macro tailwinds of when the Fed stops or pauses interest rate hikes, that Bitcoin tends to rally. We have seen this in January to July 2019, after we had successive rate hikes in 2018, and then Bitcoin rallied over 6-7 months by like 300%. Of course, we're not projecting a 300% rally, but nevertheless, when the Fed pauses after an extensive rate hiking cycle, Bitcoin tends to rally. And of course, the other comparison here is also when the CME future were announced that they're going to be launched in, they're launched in December 2017, but we got the green light on October 31st. So during this kind of 2 months window, Bitcoin prices rallied 182%. So from the moment the SEC might approve a US Bitcoin ETF based on the spot Bitcoin, we might actually see an extensive rally then, and that's what makes us quite bullish into next year.
Now, Markus, this isn't the first time that we've been waiting for this, a big catalyst for Bitcoin. And as you talk about the spot Bitcoin ETF, other countries that have launched it didn't see a massive rally. Why will this time be different?
Well, the US is, of course, the largest pool of capital. And of course, ETFs are only really established in the US. We have seen this a long time, in Asia, how Asia tried to establish ETFs, but people don't really use them. And I think this is because the investor base is very different for the US market than anywhere else. And the US is really dominated by a lot of institutions, and those institutions are using ETFs really in their asset allocation. Of course, we have the registered investment advisor community, and estimates vary from, they manage 5 trillion to even more. But if they move like 1% of those 5 trillion, that's like 50 billion into Bitcoin, right? And I think that could have like a big impact, because we sort of can calculate if the market cap changes, what might be the implications for the price of Bitcoin. And what has really changed is really that we have, certain judges telling the SEC around the grayscale lawsuit to go back and reevaluate their estimates. We're having BlackRock as the largest asset manager in the world, also filing for a Bitcoin ETF. So I think the pressure is really building. And then there is an overall sentiment that the market had that the US regulatory regime is trying to clean up the market. So and the last missing piece in this puzzle was, for example, to sort of like eliminate an exchange from the US market that has been known and admitted to had illicit trading going on.
Markus, you said even if one of these spot Bitcoin ETFs move, that could have a big impact. We're looking at Bitcoin roughly at $37,000 right now. What does that move look like? How much higher can it go?
Yeah, I think we have heard a false rumor that proved not true, where Bitcoin rallied 10%, literally in a heartbeat. So we would estimate if a spot Bitcoin ETF would be approved, Bitcoin could go up easily 20%. And I think, to put it in numbers, there's around $120 billion US in precious metals ETFs in the US. So that means in gold and in silver. And if you just move, 10, 20% of those, shift them over into Bitcoin, you have certainly sort of something around in the range of like $25 billion of inflow. And we calculated this might have actually an impact of every $1 billion, a 4% impact on the price. So we might actually see kind of a price towards kind of 57,000. We calculated. We can see if there's an approval for the Bitcoin ETF.
57,000. In the medium term?
In the medium term, yes. I mean, it sounds reasonable, right? When you look at, we were just at 25,000, like 2 months ago, and now we're at 37,000. So this is just literally like, sort of like 12,000 rally that we had. So another 12,000 point rally, it gets us already like to the 50,000 point area. So I think this can easily happen. And again, as I said, if you put in kind of the macro tailwinds of the Fed pausing, if you compare to the 2017 episode when the CME announced the Bitcoin futures, I mean, I think there is just a lot of tailwind, and I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. And don't forget, we have all these ETF providers. They're of course doing a lot of marketing. There are a lot of educational, and Larry Fink, as the CEO from BlackRock, is almost every other day on TV and saying how important a Bitcoin ETF is. So I think there is a coordinated marketing effort now to really bring prices higher.
And Markus, just quickly, I want to talk about the domino effect of the repricing of bond yields, because you're saying that, in particular, second-tier tech stocks that correlate with second-tier altcoins and crypto should see a benefit there. What are some of the top picks in that space?
Well, of course, people comparing right now, the second-tier altcoins, let's say the Solanas of the world, might be kind of the Ethereum of this cycle. So I think we're seeing a lot that the revenues are actually increasing, and there was a big shift since literally a month ago. And a month ago, what really happened? It's becoming inevitable that we're going to get this ETF now. And I think once we had this false rumor, we had like some other issues as well. We had about Ripple lawsuits for the executives were like thrown out. Out of the lawsuit that they had. So in the end, I think there is just like a lot of second order effects, because tech stocks and crypto are long duration assets, and if we see lower interest rates, lower bond yields, this is what benefits both. And I think we can look back kind of the last 3-4 years where we had the rally up and of course a crash down when we had the move in the bond yields. And I think based on our calculations, we're going to see a lot lower inflation next year. Our model from last year indicated we're going to be around 3% by now, and we sort of are at 3%. And actually for next year, we're predicting 1.6%. And this is based on the model we have been using, for a long time. So we are really bullish here right now. And I think, this is really just a summary of all these calls that we had for this year.
Markus, you're giving a lot of hope to people who hung on to their crypto assets through the crash. Markus Thielen, DeFiResearch.com, head of research. Good to talk to you today.